Everyone see it okay? We're good to go? Awesome. Okay, so hi. My name is Amy Tanzillo. I am the owner and founder of Thrive Breastfeeding. I help mamas and babies with breastfeeding issues. I have the very best job in the whole entire world. I love it. Been doing this for over 12 years now, and have probably helped thousands of families deal with anything from just getting support and feeling confident to real issues like low supply or a painful latch, pumping questions, or anything that may come up with breastfeeding. So I'm going to go through, again, I'm not going to keep you here very long. It's only 30 minutes, but I'm going to go through some slides. Please send any questions in the chat, and then I'll save some time at the end to answer. But this is something that I'm asked at every single consult. When can I start pumping? When can dad or partner give a bottle? So I'm hoping that this will be a really good overview so you guys will feel confident about pumping. And I know some of my previous clients are on here, so that's a great review. Some of my Lux clients are on here, which is awesome. But anyone who is on here and want to just shoot me a note for any questions, I'd be happy to answer that for you. Okay, so I went over my little overview and then just want to talk about what we're going to cover today. So the questions that I get most commonly with pumping is, how soon after delivery can I pump? What's the ideal pumping schedule? How long do I pump for? And you'll find that I have some opinions on power pumping, and that goes with that whole thing with duration. And then also, how do I pump to build up a stockpile? So we are going to go over that. And the answer for all of these questions is it depends. So I want you to think of the next three slides especially as an if-then scenario. There's not one answer to any of these because it all depends on what the situation is. So we're going to walk through the first three most basic scenarios. And of course, there are situations that are unique, or mom has a certain scenario that is an outlier, but this is generally what I would recommend for these different scenarios. Okay, so the first slide is really geared towards when you first deliver the baby. Maybe you're in the hospital or your birthing center or birthing at home, wherever it is, and then the first immediate postpartum time. When should I pump? So in this scenario, we're going to assume that mom has milk and baby is nursing well. Initially, when you're in the hospital or first have your baby, how do you know that baby is nursing well? Because one of the whole mysteries of breastfeeding is I don't know how much they're getting from me, right? You can't actually say it. So we're going to use these context clues. And for this slide, let's even just think about the first 3 days of life for this baby. You know, I'm asked that all the time. My Lux clients will text me from the hospital. Should I get a pump? Should I have them bring in a hospital grade pump? Should I have brought my own pump? What's the deal? And here's the scenario for if mom has milk and baby is nursing well. And these are the context clues for you to notice. First of all, babies are expected to lose weight in the hospital the first even up to 5 days of life, really. As long as they stay within 10% of their birth weight, though, it's normal. And one of the things that's unfortunate that happens if baby loses like 2 or 3 ounces, which again is totally normal, mom will start pumping immediately, or it's even recommended that she supplements, and even most unfortunately, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, but with formula unnecessarily, baby loses 5%, 6%, 7%, it's totally normal. Even up to 10% is okay. And there's other factors that may play into that. If their blood sugar gets a little wonky, then even though their weight loss is minimal, there may be a recommendation to start doing something else sooner than later. But for this kind of overall recommendation, baby's nursing well and mom has milk, so the baby will stay within that 10% weight loss range. Also, a clue is you feel your breast fill up with milk. Average time for your milk to come in is 3 to 5 days. Some of this is impacted by a couple factors, but on average, it's 3 to 5 days. But even just having your colostrum initially is enough for baby. I don't even love all the time that there's a big difference between mom goes, well, I don't have milk yet, I just have colostrum. Well, that's milk, that's nutrition. And you have to realize that first couple of days, baby's stomach is the size of a marble. So that's plenty of food. But of course, an excellent context clue when you feel that your milk is coming in. Do you need to start pumping if you don't feel your milk has necessarily come in? No, not necessarily, but that's one of the factors that we're looking at. And then the quality of feeds. Are you bringing baby to breast about every 2 to 3 hours? Do they suck for like 2 sucks and they're done, which then I would really want to evaluate if they are getting enough, or are they nursing well, at least even like 10 minutes initially, ideally up to 30 minutes as a newborn. But of course that's going to vary from feed to feed because they're brand spanking new. But quality of feeds, do you ever hear audible swallows? Are they actually drinking? And you'll be able to tell that they're drinking because the whole side of their face moves. On some babies, I see their little ear go up and down or their temple goes in and out. That's a drinking suck versus using you as a pacifier, which is serving a purpose as well, but not necessarily a nutritive suck where they just move their lips. Right, that's kind of a different suck there. But those are the context clues that there's no reason to pump. So mom is making milk, baby's nursing well, I would table pumping at that time. Next, we have the second scenario where mom has milk, but baby isn't nursing well, or baby isn't able to latch. And there's several different scenarios where this would be the case. If you look at this sweet little nugget, you can see that she has a yellow tone to her. She was born jaundice, which is an elevated bilirubin level in baby where the liver isn't working up to snuff. Very, very common in Asian babies or babies of Mediterranean descent. Funny story, my father was 100% Italian and my baby was born as yellow and dark as could be. And I was bragging to everyone that he had my father's skin, that he has a beautiful complexion, and he actually was up to like a 13 level bilirubin. This was before my lactation training. But yellow baby is certainly a sign of jaundice. So this little sweet nugget here had jaundice. And what happens when they have jaundice is they're super lethargic. It's like they're drugged. So they may go to the breast, but they're just not doing the job. And if you look very closely at this sweet baby and this mom at the actual breast, the baby's also using a nipple shield, which means could be in a couple factors, but this baby wasn't actually sustaining the latch, like coming on and off without the shield, which again would be a sign of not latching well, right? And we would have to evaluate if baby's actually getting something from mom. Another situation would be if baby was in the NICU for any reason where you weren't able to bring them to breast. And this is a case where I would start pumping sooner than later. I would, if you're in the hospital, ask for a hospital grade pump. There really isn't a reason to bring your own personal pump. If you need a pump in there, they're going to bring in the Mac Daddy, which is what you want anyway. So you would request the pump and have the pump brought in. And I'm not talking negatively at all about a hospital staff or even some recommendations from pediatricians or the house pediatrician at the hospital. But maybe in this situation, they're like, oh, well, let's just give formula. And it kind of makes me want to pull my hair out because why wouldn't you try to pump first? And if baby has lost more than, 10, 11, 12% and mom doesn't have a drop, then maybe then it does make sense to talk about supplementation, but not without trying first, right? And then the beautiful thing in hospitals now that wasn't available when I had my babies, 13, 14, 15, 16 years ago, is that they have donor milk. So these are the things to just be aware of, that you have options. But in this case, sweet baby has jaundice, mom has milk, but the milk isn't going from mom to baby, then we would pump. And then you would have assistance there in the with the lactation consultant to either spoon feed the baby or a syringe or even give the baby a bottle. But that's a time where I would recommend pumping sooner than later. And then the third scenario is where baby is able to latch and nurse well, but mom's milk isn't in. And I want to say that you can have colostrum without your milk being in, and that's enough. But let's say in this situation, there's not enough there, right? And rule number one is we have to feed the baby. So what would be a situation where mom doesn't have milk initially? It doesn't mean it's like a done deal, but may not have it in that first 1 or 2 or 3 days. Maybe mom is closer to my age than your age. That would be a factor to delay the milk coming in. Maybe I had a C-section and it's just the name of surgery. You are really given so many fluids because it is a surgery, right? That the fluids go into your milk ducts. So we need a minute to get the surgery fluids out. So there's a place for your milk to come into the breast. What helps speed up that process? Pumping, right? And then some moms just have milk that takes a while to come in. I had a mom at Sibley. This is when I did my clinical about 13 years ago. And she told me immediately, this is my 3rd kid. I will have to supplement in the meantime because I do not get milk until day 7. And she just knew it. And it was her body. And she was even, not advanced maternal age, but that was just her deal. So we started pumping immediately to give the brain the memo of like, hey, we got a baby here. We got to get this milk in. So this is a situation where I would start pumping sooner than later to get things going, to get that milk to come in. So now that we've talked pumping, when are you giving this bottle? Well, let's review those scenarios there, right? Scenario 1, the recommendation is to wait 4 weeks. You want to establish your milk supply. You want baby to really get that hang of nursing well and nursing well on your actual nipple and not plastic. You want to get this whole breastfeeding thing down before introducing that bottle. That's the recommendation. However, and this is really my approach as a lactation consultant. I actually saw a former client yesterday, and she said that this was one of the things that she really liked working with me, is that I meet you with where you are. So say you have milk, and say baby is nursing well, and the recommendation is to introduce a bottle at 4 weeks, but like you had really kind of a laborious labor, right? And delivery, and maybe had a C-section, which is a no joke of a surgery. And I think many moms aren't prepared of really what a big deal that is, and how you just need some time to heal. So maybe in these situations, we're going to introduce a bottle before 4 weeks. Yeah, like that's the recommendation, but moms like needs sleep or and I say this with all the love in my heart, it happens as a mom. We just start maybe unraveling emotionally and hormonally and exhausted. And I'll tell you, you have never, ever, ever, I have chills talking about it, and I have teenagers, loved anything like you loved this little human that is going to come out of your body. And that's really overwhelming. So maybe before 4 weeks, we're going to get dad or partner or the mother-in-law or your mom to do a bottle in the middle of the night. So that would be kind of an outlier there, but that's the general recommendation. And then scenario 2 and 3, we're going to start pumping and then offering that bottle or a syringe or spoon feeding before then. How long do you pump for? I love sharing this information because I have moms pumping for like 30 minutes, which I think sounds absolutely horrible. I mean, it is an extra step to do and you're sitting there. 15 minutes is what the recommendation is. And you are to pump for 15 minutes every 3 hours. I give my mamas a pass at night to go 4 hours. So let's just say in the scenario that baby isn't latching at all, or mom is home from the hospital and baby is still at the hospital, just being monitored, and they need to pump. I would do 3, 6, 9 noon, 3, 6, 9 midnight. I'm sorry. And then that doesn't make sense because I said 4 hours overnight, then stretch it out to 4. So you get a 4-hour block at night, but you can give yourself a little pass there overnight. So when to do the bottle, it depends. How long am I pumping for, or when to start pumping? It depends. How long to pump for? 15 minutes. And then what is the frequency? About every 3 hours, 4 hours overnight. The biggest thing for you guys to remember with protecting your milk supply is you have to move milk to make milk. So going 4, 5, 6 hours without stimulating the breast or emptying the breast. It doesn't always have to be a full empty. I think there's too much in there. Like, you have to drain the breast. Not always necessarily. A baby doesn't necessarily pull every drop of milk out of you, but you have to be consistently moving milk. So the name of the game with pumping is, or breastfeeding is, someone, that little baby or something, your pump needs to be moving milk, and on a consistent basis there. So that's really just like a great little motto to keep in your back pocket. You have to move milk to make milk. So what you need for pumping when you're building a stash, and this is for my mamas that maybe you're a little further out postpartum already, or maybe this is what you were most curious about. I had 2 moms this week. One was building a stash for a wedding, and one for I don't want to say bachelorette party, because it wasn't like rip roaring crazy. It was a spa day with the bride to be, where she was doing massages and a lunch and hanging out and spending quality time together. And she was going to be away from the baby for the first time. So we talked about building a stash. And you do need some lead time there, right? And every situation is different with how much milk that you're making and how robust your supply is, but these are some of the tips to build a stash. And when I would recommend this is after things are in a groove, and I'm not saying you can't pump before this. Maybe you're pumping for that overnight bottle to get more rest, but I don't recommend really thinking about stashing or stockpiling until you're like a few weeks out, maybe even 4 or 5 weeks out, because it's another thing that you have to do. Unless, and fortunately, thank God, I have very, very few moms that have to go back to work at like 6 weeks or 8 weeks. We're not going to worry about this slide yet. But here you are. Now you're thinking about, okay, I want to stockpile. I have this girls trip, or I'm going back to work. So how do we do that? What you'll need, first of all, is the quality pump, right? I have a Lux client now, and I'll explain at the end what a Lux is, but she sent me her whole list for her insurance company, and I kind of gave all my 2 cents on each pump and which one I thought, but ensure you can't go wrong with a Medela or a Spectra. And then of course the hospital grade if that's needed, but whatever you guys decide, you need a quality pump. The second thing is a pumping bra. So you're not holding these pump parts up to your breast the entire time. It can be tricky to find one that fits, especially my larger breasted moms, or some of them just have too much fabric. If you find one, awesome. If you don't, my favorite hack is getting an old sports bra that you really don't care about anymore and cutting holes in the sports bra. It just should have still enough elasticity to hold those parts up next to you. And then as a storage system, most moms use bags. Something to keep in mind with your storage system, and I just did a spreadsheet for a mama who she actually works for SpaceX, which I thought was cool, and she travels all over the world. So we had to calculate how much we anticipated that baby was going to weigh when she went back to work and started traveling, and what the average bottle size would be. And I'm just mentioning this because when you store the amounts in your freezer, you want to store them in the increments that you're thinking more or less. Yes, I will address that. You have to think about the size of the bottle that you're planning the baby will take. So the mom who is just leaving for a few hours at night for the wedding may not want to store 10 ounces in the freezer when the baby's only going to need 1 bottle that's 3 ounces, because once you defrost the breast milk from the freezer, it's only good for 24 hours. So she comes back from the wedding and she doesn't want to do any more bottles because she wants to, breastfeed the baby again, but also the best way to protect her supply is to breastfeed. So she gets back into her nursing, and then she has 5 ounces there that has to be used within 24 hours. So you want to have a nice storage system in terms of bags, but you also just want to be thoughtful about the size of the bags that you're making, so you're just defrosting what you need. And then the other thing is time. One of the recommendations I have for kind of delaying this pumping for stockpiling as long as you can, where it makes sense you're going to have enough time to build that stash, is it takes a minute, right? So if you are feeding your baby and then you're pumping for 15 minutes to stockpile, and it's so soon postpartum that that little guy or girl is eating again in 2 hours and a half, all you're doing is feeding or pumping all day long. So I like to wait where there's the longer stretches in between feedings. And the best time to pump, your biggest bang for your buck in terms of sitting there for 15 minutes, is first thing in the morning. Also overnight, but probably not the best time to hook up to your pump and pump for extra milk. But we make the most milk between, it's like 3 a.m. and 9 a.m. is when we make the most, right? So if you nurse baby first, hand him off or put him down, or he's taken care of, then you would pump immediately after, because that's when you have the most surplus. So you would nurse the baby, pump immediately after, and then that's your stockpile. And your biggest ROI for sitting there and pumping is typically in the morning. Your supply will go down as the day goes down. So moms make most in the morning, and then babies usually sleep initially during the day. And that's why newbornhood is so hard, because they're sleeping now. And it's like, okay, I have my coffee and the sun's out and I want to do stuff. And how can I sleep when, the birds are chirping? And then they get more choppy during the happy hour time or dinner time. And that's when our supply goes down, which is kind of what, you refer to as the witching hour, or sundowning. Old people, newborns, they get cranky, harder to satiate, and you're nursing more or feeding more. And then they eat more on a cadence overnight. So you're going to want to pump for extra when you have the most robust supply, which is typically first thing in the morning. Yes, and feel free, guys, to put your questions in here. Gosh, that went by fast. As you're putting in any questions, I also just wanted to say that I do all exclusive in-home visits. I offer all kinds of packages, and happy to talk to you about which ones would make the most sense for you and what you'd be comfortable with. I am going to copy and paste a link in the comments if you wanted to schedule a call to chat. It's 15 minutes. I can talk to you about the packages. And I'd be happy. Let's see. Can I give a bottle to give my nipples a break? Absolutely. So I recommend this a lot if your nipples are cracked or bleeding, or they just feel wrecked. First of all, I would, without a question, have your latch checked by a lactation consultant. Breastfeeding should not hurt. That is my biggest soapbox. Breastfeeding should not hurt. Your nipples shouldn't be damaged. But if you just want a break, then you can certainly pump and give baby a bottle if that's the break. And one of the great things for healing is like the silverettes. I hear my clients absolutely love letting your nipples heal out, air out. If there's any damage, then certainly letting them scab. So that helps with the airing out. But yes, you can take a break and pump and give your baby a bottle. And I think that there is too much hype about nipple confusion. It's usually flow frustration, where that baby gets a really fast bottle and then they go back to breast and they're like, what is up with this tap? And they get pissed and they start crying. And mom's like, they're nipple confusion. They're rejecting me. No, we just got to get them back to breast, and it's highly possible. Yeah, and there we go. Confused between the bottle and the nipple impact, and it can impact the latch, right? I mean, it is a piece of plastic versus a nipple, and there's strategies that we can talk about to make sure that going back and forth is seamless. But I wouldn't never give your baby a bottle because you're afraid of nipple confusion. I mean, we need sleep and we need a pedicure, and we may need to go back to work. So I don't like all the hype that's there about the nipple confusion. Ideally, you would get the latch down initially, the first week or 2 weeks, and make sure that that baby has that muscle memory. It's actually their innate instinct to latch on you. So I don't even think it's muscle memory, but at least get them in that mode before offering the bottle. Natalie, great for the wedding. So Natalie here with the comment is my mama who I talked about, who was going to a wedding. We looked at her baby's weight and how much he weighs. And if you're curious, you take your baby's current weight and you times it by 2.5. And that's how much they need a day. And then we looked at how many hours that she's going to be away from him. And we talked about how we would make sure that she has enough by tomorrow. And then even like, how do you deal with if you come home and you've had a few drinks at the wedding, or do you need a pump and dump? And we've kind of addressed all that to make mama feel confident about a well-deserved night out. So I'm so excited that you're going. Let's see, any thoughts on a wearable in-bra pumps? Yes. I'm so glad you brought this up. A Willow or an LV does not pull as much milk as your plug-in pump. So the very best is the hospital grade. Many personal pumps, your Spectra and your Medela Pump and Style are fantastic, but you are really going down in terms of the efficiency. I like them for additional pumping if you are commuting in the car, or you're walking the dog, or you're puttering around the house and you're doing it for extra, but it should not be your main pump. I have a Lux client now that she felt so robbed that she didn't know this. And she used, this is the SpaceX mama who needed to really stockpile. And she used the LV, it was either the LV or the Willow, for her main pump. And she was never able to really keep up with baby's supply. And it's because she was using a subpar pump. So that is my thought on the wearables. And they're really hard to use. I was just at a mom's this week that Willow, it's really kind of hard to use. You can't really see your nipple going in and out, so it's hard to see if the flange fits. So I like the concept, and maybe you use it as an extra pump, but you need your good everyday pump. I love to do DIY projects, and I always say when I use my drill that you put the battery on the bottom and then use the drill that you plug in, you can immediately feel the difference, right? When you're plugging in power. And that even goes for the Spectra. I had a mama who had the plug-in Spectra and the battery operated Spectra, and the one that you plugged in, which means then you're tethered to the wall somewhere, right? Is more powerful. And those factors are more important depending on the mom. So if she's flirting with a low supply, she wants that plug-in Spectra because it's kind of a big deal if she doesn't get out that extra half an ounce or an ounce. If mom's making enough for the neighborhood, then she's fine with the battery operated Spectra. So those things, those help as well. And if you guys think of any other questions, please just shoot me a DM, or I'm super responsive to text messages. I see those the fastest, and that's the number here on this slide. It's my HIPAA compliant portal number, which will go right to my phone so I could answer that. And then if you're having a baby this summer, I would absolutely, well, anytime you're having a baby, but I just wanted to mention this summer because it is my absolute favorite season, and I do like to go to the Jersey Shore. So I plan my trips based on when my clients' delivery dates are. So it is important for me to know if you're going to use me, because I absolutely 100% will be available. But of course, then I need to be booked ahead of time, right? That little jaundice baby in the beginning of our presentation, that mama was due when I was planning a trip to the shore, and I wouldn't leave until I knew she was still pregnant. So I knew I could go up there for 2 nights and then get back if needed. And the mom held on to that baby for an extra week, so we were fine. But so happy you guys came. I'll send the replay to everyone. If you have any questions at all, please let me know. And again, you can click on that link with the Calendarly invite if you want to set up a quick call about working together. I'll also send you my reviews as well. I think it's a great idea to get a vibe of what it's like to work together. But hope everyone has a great weekend, and thank you again for joining.